The tribunal of Xyler floated silently above the glowing surface of Archon 5, its crystal spire catching the light of 3 suns in a dazzling, blinding halo. Ships from 100 worlds filled the orbit, but none were like this. Humans had arrived, and their presence was not a matter of choice. They had been summoned after centuries of exploring the stars, yet now they felt as small and fragile as children in the halls of beings far older and larger than themselves. Liam walked beside Sophie as they entered the tribunal chamber. The walls shimmered like liquid glass, reflecting the shapes of the alien delegates in strange and distorted ways. Every footstep echoed like a drumbeat through the hall, emphasizing the silence of the audience. The humans' transport had docked at a wide platform high above the chamber floor, and they had descended slowly, their faces calm but their hearts pounding. They were aware of the eyes watching them, thousands of eyes, some glowing, some faceted like insects, some that seemed to pierce straight through their very minds. Liam adjusted the folds of his uniform, feeling the weight of responsibility press on his shoulders. Sophie's hand brushed against his arm. Her grip was gentle but firm, a reminder that they were not alone. Both had been chosen for this mission not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because they could think quickly, speak with clarity, and maintain composure under pressure. The fate of humanity rested on their words and their presence alone. The chamber itself was breathtaking. Towers of crystal spiraled toward the ceiling, their surfaces twisting and changing color with the movement of the suns outside. Pools of light hovered above the floor like miniature stars, illuminating the faces of the tribunal's members. Each delegate was different from the next. Some had 6 arms, some had no eyes, some floated without legs. Their forms were alien in every sense, but their authority radiated like a tangible force. Liam could feel it pressing against him, heavy and unyielding. The elder Zari stepped forward, taller than any human Liam had ever seen. Its body shimmered with translucent scales that reflected light in rainbow patterns. Its voice, though soft, carried across the vast chamber with a sharpness that made the humans stiffen. "You have been brought here for judgment," Zari said. "For centuries, your species has moved across the stars without the permission of the Council. You have built, learned, and explored, yet you have ignored the laws of the galaxy. You are unpredictable, unstable, and dangerous. You will be assessed and classified." Liam swallowed hard. Every word echoed in his mind. They had expected resistance, hostility, perhaps even prejudice, but to hear themselves labeled as dangerous was almost surreal. He glanced at Sophie, whose eyes were wide but steady. She nodded slightly, encouraging him to speak. He took a deep breath, trying to gather courage he was not sure he possessed. "Honorable members of the tribunal," he began, his voice trembling slightly but growing stronger with every word, "we come before you not as conquerors nor as rebels. Humanity has always sought knowledge, understanding, and cooperation. We have explored the stars not to dominate but to learn, to build, and to connect with other civilizations. Our history is long, yes, but our intentions are guided by curiosity and cooperation, not malice." Sophie stepped forward and repeated his words in the alien tongue, her voice measured and clear. Liam felt a small surge of hope. Maybe they would listen. Maybe they would understand. Zari's multifaceted eyes tilted as if considering this claim. Then, without a single pause, it spoke again. "Your words are meaningless if your actions cannot be trusted. You have shown unpredictability, and unpredictability is a threat to order. Freedom for you would be chaos. You will serve." The words hit Liam like a physical blow. His knees felt weak, yet he forced himself to stand taller. He felt Sophie squeeze his arm in silent support. Around them, other humans whispered, trying to calm their own fear. Some bowed instinctively, but Liam and Sophie did not. They had been trained to resist such reflexes. "You call us dangerous," Liam said, his voice rising slightly, "but you see only what you wish. We are not slaves to your judgment. We are not chaos incarnate. We are capable of choice, of reason, and of courage. You cannot define us by fear." A ripple of sound passed through the chamber. The aliens murmured among themselves. Some seemed amused. Some seemed angry. Zari's glowing eyes narrowed. "You misunderstand. This is not about fear. This is about control. You are not fit to govern yourselves. You will be contained. You will serve where assigned. Resistance is futile." Even as the words echoed, Liam could see it, the first cracks of doubt in the tribunal. Not all the aliens were convinced that humans were mere tools to be ordered around. The energy in the room shifted subtly. Some delegates leaned closer, whispering. Others remained still, their faces unreadable. Sophie took a step closer to Liam. "We cannot allow them to define who we are," she whispered. He nodded, understanding without replying. Humanity had faced worse than alien judgment. They had survived plagues, wars, famine, and natural disasters. They had endured centuries of internal conflict and inequality, yet here they were, still standing, still willing to fight for their freedom in the quiet ways that mattered. Liam raised his voice, louder now, resonating in the vast chamber. You can call us unpredictable, dangerous, or unworthy, but we have something you cannot understand. We have hope, unity, and the will to survive. Label us slaves, try to bind us, and you will find that these chains are not strong enough. Our spirit cannot be broken. You will not own our minds. You will not own our hearts. For a long moment, the tribunal remained silent. The room was filled with a tension so thick it was almost visible. Liam could feel the weight of hundreds of alien gazes on him, assessing, judging, measuring. He held his stance, refusing to flinch. Sophie stood beside him, her own expression one of quiet determination. Then Zari spoke again, softer this time, but still carrying the unmistakable authority of an elder. Very well. You will be contained. You will be watched. And yet, perhaps we underestimated you. Liam allowed himself a small exhale, but he did not smile. He knew this was only the beginning. The labeling of humans as slaves was not the end, it was a spark. And sparks, when nurtured, could grow into fire. The humans were led away, escorted to their designated transport ships. The corridors of the tribunal were still gleaming and alien, but the humans walked with heads held high. Whispers of courage and defiance spread among them. Liam and Sophie spoke quietly to one another as they were moved through the halls. We are not done, Sophie said. Liam nodded. Never done, he replied. Even as the doors closed behind them, the feeling of being watched lingered. They were being judged, yes, but judgment had a flaw. It assumed that those judged were weak. And humans, as the tribunal would soon learn, were never weak when they had each other. The stars outside the transport window stretched endlessly, cold and indifferent. Yet Liam felt warmth in his chest, a warmth born of hope, of defiance, of the certainty that humanity would survive, no matter what the galaxy demanded. And deep in the tribunal, Elder Zari's eyes lingered on the departing humans, a strange unease flickering across its face. Perhaps they were right to fear unpredictability. Perhaps humans were not like any species the galaxy had ever known. Liam turned to Sophie, and together they stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there were the worlds of the tribunal, vast and powerful, but the humans felt something stronger than fear. They felt the quiet power of a species that would not be bowed, that would not be broken, and that would not be labeled without consequence. For now, the tribunal had claimed victory, had labeled humanity as slaves, had tried to define them. But in the hearts of Liam, Sophie, and every human present, the fire of defiance burned brighter than any alien crystal. And that fire would not go out. The human transport ships drifted through space like silent shadows, immense in size and cold to the touch. Inside, the humans huddled together, their faces pale, eyes wide with fear and determination. The ship's corridors were sterile and harsh, lined with metal walls that reflected the dim lighting. No one spoke above a whisper, for the alien guards patrolled constantly, their multifaceted eyes scanning, their presence heavy and unyielding. Evan, a mechanic from one of Earth's outer colonies, moved through the crowded quarters, checking that the younger humans were seated and calm. His hands were steady, his voice calm, yet his mind raced with plans. Beside him, Clara, a medic, comforted those who trembled or cried, offering quiet reassurances and soft touches. Her presence was a balm in the oppressive atmosphere. The humans had been stripped of their tools, their devices, even their weapons. They were being scattered across different labor worlds, forced to serve as miners, laborers, and assistants to alien overseers. Yet even in this helplessness, the human spirit persisted. Whispered conversations spoke of hope, of plans, of subtle resistance. On the mining planet Corin, the humans were unloaded under the watchful eyes of the alien taskmasters. The surface was harsh and jagged, its skies tinted a deep red from the twin suns. Dust swirled in thin storms, and the air was thick with the metallic scent of ores. Alien overseers moved among the laborers, tall, sharp-limbed beings with voices like grinding metal, barking orders without pause. Evan surveyed the scene and drew a deep breath. He knew the first rule: survival. They had to appear compliant, quiet, and obedient. But beneath the surface, small acts of defiance could take root. Clara approached him, her eyes reflecting the fiery skies above. "We need to start teaching them," she said softly. "Small things. Signals, codes, ways to protect each other." Evan nodded. "We will. One step at a time." They won't see us coming until we're ready. In the dormitories, humans gathered each night after their exhausting work in the mines. Clara would tend to minor injuries, while Evan whispered instructions about subtle resistance. They taught their fellow humans small signals, touches, taps, or knocks that could convey messages without the aliens noticing. They devised ways to hide tiny tools, to sabotage machinery without endangering anyone, and to share hope through whispered stories of Earth. One evening, after the humans had returned from the mines, Evan called the group together in the corner of the dormitory. "Listen carefully," he said. "We cannot fight openly, not yet. But we can make our presence felt. We can show them we are more than laborers." Clara stepped forward. "We'll start with the simplest thing. Signals. If one of us is in trouble, the others will know. If a machine fails, it can be human action or accident, but the message will spread. Keep your heads down, but remember we are never powerless." At first, the other humans were hesitant. Fear had a strong grip. But slowly they began to understand. They whispered words of encouragement, shared subtle gestures, and helped one another adjust to the harsh reality. Even the children learned the codes, tapping their small hands in rhythms that could pass unnoticed by alien eyes. The alien overseers, expecting nothing but compliance, began to notice small anomalies. Machines would malfunction for brief moments. Crates would be moved incorrectly. Orders given would take longer to carry out than necessary. These were tiny, almost imperceptible, but consistent enough to raise concern. Evan and Clara smiled secretly whenever they observed a minor success. One small disruption here, one signal there, each act of defiance reinforced the humans' unity. Even in the harshest conditions they began to feel their power, not the power to strike back openly but the power to endure, resist, and adapt. Then came the day of the first major test. A critical supply hub, central to the mining operation, depended on precise coordination of workers and machinery. Evan had studied the routines in secret for weeks. He and Clara had gathered information from whispers and observations, noting weaknesses and timing. That night, they executed a small plan, a temporary misalignment of conveyor belts, subtle enough to avoid detection but enough to halt operations for hours. The next morning, chaos rippled through the mining site. Alien overseers shouted and barked, their voices sharp with anger and confusion. Supply lines were disrupted. Machines ground to a halt. Workers scrambled, unsure of the failure. Amid the disorder, the humans moved quietly, completing their tasks while leaving tiny signs that hinted at organized intent. Some alien overseers began to whisper among themselves. "It must be sabotage," one said. "But by whom? These humans are supposed to obey." Doubt flickered in their eyes. They had not expected intelligence and coordination among those they believed to be weak and compliant. Within the human ranks, a quiet pride spread. They were no longer merely laborers. They were a small force, a network connected by trust, signals, and courage. Evan and Clara knew they could not yet challenge the overseers openly, but this was a start. A single disruption, carefully executed, had shown that humans could act with purpose even under chains. The days that followed were filled with cautious experimentation. Small errors were introduced in machinery. Deliveries were subtly delayed. Signals were passed silently, telling one group when another was in danger. Each minor success increased confidence, unity, and the sense that the humans were not alone. Even among the aliens, confusion grew. Some had begun to observe humans with something akin to curiosity. "Why do they endure so quietly yet still resist?" one low-ranking officer murmured. "They are supposed to be weak. Yet there is coordination, even intelligence." Clara and Evan gathered the humans one evening, exhausted but exhilarated. "Remember," Evan said, "our strength is quiet, patient, and careful. We cannot win by force, but we can win by being clever. We can show them that labeling us as slaves was a mistake." One young girl, barely 10, raised her hand. "Will they ever stop calling us slaves?" she asked. Her voice was small, but her eyes were bright. Clara knelt to meet her gaze. "They may try," she said softly. "But the thing about humans is, we don't give up. We keep going and we help each other. That's our strength." Over time, the small acts of resistance grew. Humans who once felt powerless began to see themselves as capable. They learned to hide their intentions, to act with patience, and to communicate without detection. Even in a world designed to crush them, they discovered unity, courage, and ingenuity. Evan and Clara walked together one night, watching the twin suns set over Corin's jagged mountains. "Do you think they'll ever understand us?" Clara asked. Evan shook his head. "Not now. Maybe never. But they will see the results. They will see what humans can do when they refuse to be broken. The alien overseers, puzzled and irritated, could not predict the humans' quiet rebellion. Each failure of machinery, each missed order, each moment of subtle defiance was a reminder: humans were not tools. They were not compliant. And slowly, even the aliens had to question whether they had been right to underestimate them. The humans on Corin, led by Evan and Clara, had begun to learn a vital truth. Strength did not always come from force. Freedom could not always be won in a battle of weapons. Sometimes, it came from patience, intelligence, courage, and unity, the very qualities that had made humanity resilient for centuries. Even under oppression, even when labeled slaves, the humans found power in each other. And far above them, in the orbiting spires and distant council chambers, the galaxy would begin to notice the spark they had started, quiet, subtle, but unstoppable in its potential. The heat of Corin's surface was relentless. The twin suns beat down on the jagged landscape, turning the air into a shimmering haze. Dust and metal fragments rose from the constant mining, and the humans moved carefully through the rocky terrain, carrying heavy loads under the watchful eyes of alien overseers. The work was exhausting, backbreaking, and meant to crush the spirit. Yet within the humans something quietly shifted. Maya wiped the sweat from her brow, her dark hair sticking to her face. She had been observing the machines for weeks, noticing patterns that no alien could see. The conveyor belts that carried, or the extractors that tore into the rock, the pressure systems that powered the drills. Each had weaknesses, subtle flaws left unattended by the aliens, who assumed that humans were too simple to notice. Maya smiled faintly. Humans might be slaves, but even slaves could think and they could plan. Evan approached her, his face grim but resolute. "What did you find?" he asked quietly, careful not to attract attention. Maya pointed to a section of the ore conveyor. "If we adjust this gear here," she said, tracing a line with her finger, "and loosen that valve slightly, the machines will stop working for a few hours. No one gets hurt and it looks like an accident. But it will slow the entire operation." Clara, standing a few steps away with a group of humans she had tended and guided, nodded. "We have to do this carefully," she said. "One mistake and they'll punish everyone. But if it works, it will show them we are not powerless." That night, under the dim glow of Corin's red sky, Maya, Evan, and Clara moved silently among the machines. Every step was measured, every breath controlled. Sweat ran down their faces from both fear and exertion, but they pressed on. Maya's hands worked quickly, adjusting gears, loosening valves, making sure nothing would endanger anyone. Finally they stepped back and waited. At first nothing happened. Then, slowly the machines began to stutter. A conveyor belt shuddered, a drill slowed, an extractor coughed and stopped. Panic spread among the alien overseers. They shouted orders, their voices harsh and metallic, but the humans kept working quietly, blending with the crowd as though nothing unusual was occurring. Some of the alien workers, those who were themselves treated harshly by the overseers, stopped and watched. They were curious. They had never seen humans act with such courage, intelligence, and care. Humans were not reckless or selfish. They thought, planned, and acted with precision. It was strange to the aliens, almost alien to them, and yet fascinating. Word of the disruption spread quickly among the aliens. Corin's command structure began to notice. Supplies were delayed, machines were failing, and work was far behind schedule. Panic grew among the overseers. They called for reinforcements, more enforcers to tighten control and to search for the cause. They believed humans had no capacity to plan or organize, but here was proof to the contrary. Humans were not invisible anymore. Within the human ranks, whispers of excitement spread. "We did it," a young miner said quietly to another. "They won't know what hit them." Maya allowed herself a small smile, even as she moved back to the shadows. Clara nodded at her. "It's just the beginning," she said. "One spark is enough to light a fire if we keep it alive." Evan approached a small group of human laborers who had been helping monitor the machinery. "Remember," he said, "we are careful. We do not need to fight openly. We survive first. Then we resist in ways they cannot predict. That is our strength." The next day the overseers increased their patrols. They scrutinized every human movement, trying to find the ones responsible for the disruptions. They punished minor infractions severely, assuming that fear would keep the humans in line. But the humans had learned well. Their signals, their subtle codes, their silent coordination, these could not be seen by the overseers. And so even under the closest watch, they continued to work quietly to slow operations, protect one another, and strengthen their network. Maya, Evan, and Clara began teaching others. Each human learned how to observe the machines, identify weaknesses, and report silently using taps, gestures, and small sounds. The group grew quickly, spreading knowledge and confidence through whispers. Even children were instructed carefully so that the smallest among them could contribute. Some alien workers who had once treated humans with disdain began to observe from a distance. They saw humans helping one another, risking small punishments to protect each other, and acting with intelligence and morality that the aliens themselves did not understand. They began to question their assumptions. Perhaps these humans were not simply laborers, they were something different. Something capable. Something dangerous. The overseers, frustrated and angry, called more reinforcements. Ships arrived from nearby outposts, armed patrols increased, and alien supervisors from other planets came to inspect Corin. The humans, however, remained calm, silent, and watchful. They had learned patience. They had learned cleverness. And they had learned that sometimes the greatest power is quiet, unseen, and unstoppable when combined with unity. Days passed and the humans continued their work, all the while planning, observing, and teaching. Every small act of resistance became a lesson. Every minor sabotage showed the overseers that humans were not to be underestimated. The spark had been lit. And sparks, if nurtured, could become flames that even the strongest alien forces could not extinguish. One evening, as Corin's twin suns set and the red sky deepened to a bruised purple, Maya, Evan, and Clara gathered in the shadows of a jagged rock formation. "We have started something," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They don't know how dangerous it could become." Evan nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead. "We must stay careful," he said. "But we also need to keep teaching. Every human here must know they are not powerless. Every human must know that resistance is possible, even in chains." Clara looked out at the horizon, where alien patrols moved like silent predators over the rocky terrain. "They will come for us," she said quietly. "They always do when they feel threatened. But we are ready. We have each other. That is more than they expected. That is more than they can control." That night, the humans went to sleep in small groups, their minds restless but alive with purpose. Outside, the alien patrols passed by, oblivious to the quiet revolution taking shape beneath their eyes. Inside, whispers of codes, gestures, and small strategies filled the air. Humans were no longer just laborers. They were a network, a community, a force in the making. The aliens sent reports to Corin's command. The humans were causing delays, disrupting work, and showing unexpected cleverness. Reinforcements were sent, but the humans adapted. Each attempt to tighten control was met with patience, observation, and quiet resistance. The aliens were learning, slowly and reluctantly, that humans could not be predicted. They were intelligent, resourceful, and united in ways the overseers could not understand. Maya moved through the dormitories, checking on the younger humans. "Remember," she said, "we do not fight with anger or strength. We fight with intelligence, patience, and unity. One spark can become a fire if we keep it alive. Never forget that." Evan leaned against a support beam, watching the miners return from the day's work. "We may be labeled as slaves," he said softly to Clara, "but no chain can hold a mind that refuses to be broken. No guard can stop a spirit that is united." Clara smiled faintly, her eyes tired but determined. "We are learning the truth of what humans can do," she said. "Even in the worst conditions we can rise. Even in chains we can resist." The spark that Maya, Evan, and Clara had started continued to grow, quiet and invisible to the alien overseers, but powerful beyond measure. The humans on Corin were no longer simply victims. They were a force capable of intelligence, strategy, and courage. The first spark of rebellion had been lit, and nothing on Corin could extinguish it. In the command halls far above the mining surface, alien leaders grew uneasy. Reports of minor disruptions, unusual coordination, and unexpected intelligence among the humans unsettled them. "They are cleverer than we thought," one officer admitted. "Perhaps we underestimated them." Yet the humans did not boast, did not shout, did not act recklessly. They remained patient, observant, and careful. Each small act of sabotage, each secret code, each moment of quiet resistance was a lesson for the next generation of humans. And in that moment, under the red sky of Corin, the humans began to understand something vital. Chains could bind the body but never the mind. Orders could control actions but never the spirit. Oppression could try to crush them, but the fire of unity, courage, and intelligence could not be extinguished. The spark was small but it was enough. Across the galaxy, humans were no longer scattered, silent, and submissive. The quiet resistance that had begun on Corin had spread to other labor worlds. It moved slowly at first, like a shadow stretching across a room, but then it grew, invisible yet unstoppable. Humans on mining planets, cargo stations, and industrial colonies began to communicate in ways the aliens could not detect. Simple codes, gestures, signals, and timing allowed them to share information and coordinate actions. They were learning to operate as a single, careful network despite being far apart. Noah, a young engineer with dark hair and keen eyes, worked in a communications hub on one of the trading stations orbiting the planet Viral. The hub was a massive structure, filled with alien operators monitoring dozens of incoming and outgoing signals. Noah had studied their patterns for weeks. He had memorized the schedules, the weak points in security, and the timing of transmissions. One evening, he whispered instructions to two human assistants. "We need to tap their lines quietly," he said. "Just enough to pass messages without them noticing. Watch carefully. If we get caught, everything fails." Noah's fingers moved quickly over the panels, tapping into the alien network. At first, nothing happened. Then subtle changes began to ripple through the system. Messages that should have taken hours to reach one station arrived in minutes at another. Misplaced coordinates slowed shipments. Signals that were supposed to remain secret were quietly redirected to human-controlled channels. The aliens noticed delays and errors, but they could not trace the source. Far across the galaxy, Lila, a former trader, worked with similar precision. She had once traveled between worlds freely, learning the customs, habits, and weaknesses of countless alien species. Now, she used that knowledge to decode the strategies of the tribunal and the overseers. She discovered how shipments were routed, how patrols moved, and where communication bottlenecks occurred. By sharing this information through Noah's network, humans on different worlds could anticipate problems, sabotage supply lines, and protect one another from punishment. One day, Lila sat with a small group of humans in a hidden room beneath a factory on the moon of Talara. "The tribunal isn't just afraid of our actions," she said quietly, her eyes shining with determination. "They fear something ancient. Legends claim humans could evolve into an uncontrollable power. That's why they sent us to labor. They thought we could be controlled. They were wrong." The humans listened in silence. The truth was both terrifying and liberating. They were underestimated. The galaxy believed them weak. The tribunal believed humans could be bound and broken. But humans were clever, resilient, and patient. And now they knew that patience could become power. Coordinated actions began to have visible effects. On one planet, a shipment of critical machinery failed to arrive because humans had subtly disrupted the transport sequence. On another, factories ground to a halt because someone had redirected power lines at the right time. Ships stalled in orbit, unable to dock or take off. Communications that the aliens relied on for strategy were quietly rerouted or delayed. The humans' influence spread, invisible but unmistakable, touching every corner of the galaxy's labor systems. The tribunal began to notice. Reports came in from overseers and commanders. Delays, failures, and anomalies were happening everywhere. Their carefully ordered system was faltering. The aliens panicked, calling emergency meetings and demanding explanations. "How can this be?" one officer shouted. "These humans are supposed to be laborers. They should obey. Something is wrong. They cannot coordinate on this scale. Check every system, every transmission, every station." Noah listened to reports quietly from his hidden post. He and Lila shared a brief glance. "It's working," he whispered. "They cannot stop us. They cannot predict us." Meanwhile, humans continued their careful work. On every world, they moved cautiously, observing patterns, teaching one another signals, and striking in ways that avoided detection. No one was harmed unnecessarily. Their goal was not to kill but to demonstrate capability and resilience. Even overseers who treated humans harshly began to notice the difference. These humans were not just laborers. They acted with intelligence, foresight, and care. Some alien workers began to watch secretly, intrigued and even inspired by the humans' courage. As the chaos spread, small acts became bolder. A shipment of supplies destined for a tribunal outpost vanished for several hours because a human engineer had rerouted the cargo quietly. A power hub that controlled multiple factories on another world experienced short disruptions because a few humans coordinated timing and pressure adjustments. Each incident reinforced the network, strengthened the humans' confidence, and spread the subtle message: humans could not be underestimated. In one hidden room on the industrial planet Riven, Noah, Lila, and several other humans gathered around a holographic map of the galaxy. Red dots marked alien operations, Blue dots represented human workers, and lines of faint light showed communications and possible actions. "Look here," Lila said, pointing at a cluster of factories. "If we redirect the power flow and delay shipments here and here, their operations will stop for days. The tribunal will panic even more. And no one will know who did it." Noah nodded. "We are not fighting openly. That is why we are safe. Our strength is in knowledge, patience, and coordination. One mistake and we could be caught, but if we act together, even quietly, we can make the galaxy see that we are not slaves. We are humans." And the galaxy did begin to notice. Ships were delayed. Supply lines failed. Factories halted. The overseers, who had been certain of human obedience, could not explain the errors. The tribunal, thousands of light years away, felt the tremors of chaos spreading. Panic spread through their chambers. They had thought they controlled the humans. They had thought they could suppress them. But humans were clever, adaptable, and coordinated. The tribunal had misjudged the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Even as panic grew among the aliens, humans remained calm. They communicated in silence, taught signals and strategies to each other, and spread hope across the worlds. They were careful, intelligent, and united. Even children and the elderly found ways to contribute, passing messages, observing patterns, or providing support to workers. Every act, no matter how small, contributed to the network. Noah and Lila often met in secret, reviewing the impact of their work. "They are realizing they underestimated us," Noah said quietly. "But we must keep careful. They will respond eventually. Reinforcements will come. We cannot be careless." Lila smiled faintly. "We are ready. We have learned patience. We have learned cleverness. We have learned unity. They cannot predict us. They cannot control us. And they will never see us coming." Across multiple worlds, humans continued their careful work. Ships that were supposed to carry supplies stalled in orbit. Factories that depended on precise schedules ground to a halt. Communication lines that had been trusted for decades now delivered information too late or to the wrong recipients. The humans' influence spread like a quiet wave, growing in strength, patience, and precision. The tribunal, overwhelmed by reports, finally realized the truth. Humans were not weak. They were not simple. They were intelligent, adaptable, patient, and capable of coordination that surpassed expectation. Panic filled the council chambers. Orders were given, patrols increased, and overseers were sent to find the source of disruption. But the humans had anticipated these actions. They had prepared for patience, secrecy, and resilience. In secret, the human network celebrated small victories. A shipment that was delayed successfully, a factory that had been disrupted without harm, a communication that had been intercepted quietly, all were successes that reminded them of what they were capable of. They were not slaves. They were a force, careful and patient, but powerful in ways the aliens could not understand. And somewhere, far above all the labor worlds, in the shining chambers of the tribunal, the elders whispered among themselves. "We misjudged them," one admitted, voice low. "They are clever, coordinated, and patient. We cannot predict them. We cannot control them. Perhaps we have made a mistake." Noah and Lila, on separate worlds, smiled quietly. Their work was only beginning. The spark of resistance had grown into a quiet fire that spread across the galaxy. The human strength was not in weapons or violence but in intelligence, unity, and patience. The turning point had come. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and it was beginning to pay the price. The galaxy had never seen humans move like this before. From distant labor worlds to isolated colonies, humans were no longer silent and compliant. They had learned patience, coordination, and cleverness. And now, with leaders like Eli and Fiona guiding them, the humans were ready to confront the tribunal. Eli, a former pilot, moved among the humans in a hidden command center on the planet Arlo. Maps and communication charts covered the walls, glowing faintly in the low light. He studied the positions of alien forces, patrol routes, and critical installations. Every movement had been observed, every weakness noted. Humans were outnumbered and outgunned, but they had intelligence, strategy, and unity, the tools no alien could predict or fully counter. Fiona, a former trader who had crossed countless worlds, stood beside him. Her sharp mind had deciphered alien protocols, their methods of control, and the assumptions behind every decision. "We don't need to fight them with weapons," she said quietly. "We fight them with knowledge, patience, and strategy. Every colony we liberate, every system we control without bloodshed, will show them that freedom cannot be caged." Humans spread across the galaxy like a quiet storm. They moved from colony to colony, teaching signals, coordinating sabotage, and using negotiation when it could prevent violence. On the mining planet Corin, Eli led a group that intercepted overseer communications, redirecting patrols and supply lines so that humans could move safely to freedom. Entire colonies were liberated through careful planning and timing. Machines were temporarily disabled, doors unlocked, and alien patrols diverted, all without a single human firing a weapon. Fiona coordinated efforts on the industrial world Talera, where hundreds of human laborers had been trapped under alien supervision. Using signals and subtle manipulations of the factory's systems, she orchestrated the workers' movements. Conveyors carried laborers to hidden exits, alarms were diverted, and overseers were left confused, unable to respond effectively. Within hours, humans controlled the factory complex, freed their fellow workers, and even managed to secure transport ships to move them to safety. Every victory spread across communication lines. News of human cleverness, patience, and unity inspired humans on other worlds. They saw that strategy, not force, could achieve results beyond expectation. The aliens' assumption, that humans were weak, unpredictable, and compliant, was collapsing under quiet, precise action. The tribunal itself became aware of the disruptions. From their chambers on Arkan 5, elders observed reports from multiple systems. Entire labor colonies were no longer under alien control. Patrols had failed to maintain order. Supply lines were interrupted. Factories and mining operations had been cleverly bypassed, rendering the tribunal's authority ineffective without the need for open warfare. One elder, Zari, could not hide the astonishment in their multifaceted eyes. "These humans," they said to their fellow council members, "they are small, fragile, yet they have turned our greatest powers into instruments of their own strategy. We underestimated them. We misjudged them." Eli and Fiona continued to guide operations. On planet Viral, Eli negotiated with alien officers who had grown curious about humans. Using careful diplomacy, he convinced them to cooperate with human plans in exchange for safety and fair treatment. The officers, accustomed to commanding without question, were astonished by the humans' intelligence and logic. Many complied quietly, realizing resistance was futile and humans had already turned the situation to their advantage. Meanwhile, Fiona focused on alien systems and protocols. By exploiting small weaknesses in administration and communication, she ensured that humans could move, gather resources, and coordinate across worlds. Her teams liberated dozens of colonies, each operation precise, silent, and methodical. Entire populations that had once lived under oppression found freedom through planning and clever tactics. Humans moved like a shadow network across the galaxy. No blaster fire, no explosions, no open battles. Only coordination, patience, and clever execution. Each victory, each liberation spread further confidence among humans. And the tribunal could do nothing but watch. The elders convened an emergency session. Reports poured in. Colonies were liberated, overseers were confused, supply lines had collapsed, and even some alien officers had joined human plans voluntarily. Panic rippled through the tribunal chambers. Zari, looking across the council, said quietly, "We believed humans were controllable. We believed they were weak. We were wrong. We have unleashed a species we cannot contain." Eli and Fiona, hearing through intelligence reports, allowed themselves a quiet smile. They knew this moment was critical. Humans had not only survived, but they had shown that freedom, unity, and cleverness could overcome the galaxy's mightiest powers. In strategic meetings across liberated colonies, humans discussed the next steps. Their message was clear: no violence unless necessary, and always act with intelligence, precision, and morality. "We do not need to fight," Fiona said. "We do not need to dominate. The galaxy will see that freedom and choice are stronger than chains or domination." Across systems, humans coordinated again. Trade routes once controlled by the tribunal were quietly redirected. Communications that had once enforced obedience were now used to spread hope and strategy. Alien patrols, confused and unprepared for such intelligence and cooperation, often stood aside, powerless to act effectively. The tribunal's fear grew. They realized they had miscalculated humanity's potential. Not in strength of arms, but in cunning, patience, and morality, the qualities that made humans unpredictable and resilient. Entire fleets that had been sent to suppress uprisings found themselves delayed, misdirected, or rendered ineffective through clever human strategy. On Arlo, Eli spoke to a council of human leaders. "We are at the turning point," he said, voice calm but firm. "We do not destroy for destruction's sake. We do not take lives. We show the galaxy that humans cannot be controlled. Our power is our unity, our intelligence, and our freedom. We will continue until every human knows that they are not slaves. Fiona nodded. And every alien who watches will learn as well. Strength is not only measured by weapons or fleets. Strength is measured by choice, by courage, and by the capacity to act with intelligence and morality. That is what humans have always known. By the time the humans approached the tribunal itself, they were no longer small, fearful laborers. They had become a quiet but unstoppable force, liberating entire colonies, reorganizing fleets, and coordinating systems with precision. And the tribunal, which had once labeled humanity as slaves, could only watch in astonishment. Eli, Fiona, and their teams entered the tribunal's crystal chambers. There were no weapons, no threats, only determination and intelligence. The council elders faced them, uneasy, unable to predict what these humans might do. Eli spoke clearly. We have come to show you that freedom is stronger than chains. That choice is stronger than domination. You have misjudged our species for too long. We do not need to fight with violence to prove our strength. We need only demonstrate our unity, intelligence, and courage. Fiona added, look around. Entire colonies are free. Supply lines have been restored under human coordination. Your fleets are no longer instruments of control, they serve our strategy because your assumptions about our obedience were false. We ask for one thing, acknowledgement that humans are capable of choice and freedom to act as a species. The elders of the tribunal looked at one another. Silence filled the chamber. They had expected rebellion, defiance, or surrender. What they saw instead was methodical intelligence and unity. The humans' actions had proven their capabilities. Their moral and strategic strength could not be ignored. Finally, Elder Zari stepped forward. We misjudged you, the elder said, voice unsteady. We believed we controlled you. We believed you could be made compliant. We were wrong. The galaxy has learned a truth that we refuse to see. Freedom and choice are mightier than chains or domination. Humans nodded. They had not demanded revenge. They had not sought to destroy. They had acted with patience, intelligence, and morality, and that was their victory. Across the galaxy, colonies once shackled by alien control celebrated. Systems were quietly returned to human governance. Aliens who had observed the resistance began to respect the intelligence and courage of humans. A new order emerged, not through violence but through cleverness, patience, and strategy. Eli and Fiona, standing together in the tribunal chambers, allowed themselves a moment of quiet triumph. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and in doing so they had shown their true power, not in force but in the ability to think, unite, and act with purpose. The tribunal had been forced to acknowledge a reality they had ignored for centuries. Humans were not slaves. Humans were a species of intelligence, courage, and morality. And that recognition, more than any weapon, more than any fleet, marked the true reckoning. Humans had won. Years had passed since the humans had confronted the tribunal. The galaxy was no longer the same. Labor worlds once dominated by alien powers had shifted quietly, subtly, but irreversibly. Humans, who had once been labeled as slaves, now walked among the stars with freedom, intelligence, and purpose. They did not seek revenge. They did not act out of anger or pride. Instead, they moved with patience, careful guidance, and a moral authority that left even the oldest alien races in awe. On the thriving colony of Arlo, Liam and Sophie worked among humans and alien allies alike. Liam had once been a young diplomat, pleading with the tribunal for respect, and now he helped coordinate interstellar relations. Sophie translated cultures and languages, smoothing tensions and teaching understanding. Together, they helped create a network of communication and trust that spanned multiple star systems. Evan and Clara had returned to Corin, the mining world where their quiet resistance had first begun. They walked among rebuilt factories and labor stations, no longer overseen by harsh aliens but guided by humans who had learned the value of freedom, cooperation, and innovation. Machines hummed efficiently not because they were forced to work, but because humans had taught others to respect their tools, to improve them, and to use them wisely. Maya, once the young observer of machinery, now led a team of engineers across multiple planets. She trained humans and willing aliens alike to repair, maintain, and improve the complex systems that powered the galaxy. Her careful planning had once disrupted operations for the overseers. Now it built systems that worked efficiently and safely, benefiting all species. Noah and Lila, who had once coordinated secret communications and mapped alien strategies, now managed interstellar networks openly. Trade, information, and science flowed across worlds with precision. Messages that once carried hidden codes now carried knowledge and opportunity. Aliens and humans alike relied on their guidance to maintain order and prosperity. Eli and Fiona, the strategists who had led liberation efforts, walked among free colonies and starports, teaching cooperation and governance. They had shown that intelligence and patience were more powerful than weapons. They guided communities, helped establish laws and ethics, and promoted fairness and understanding between species that had once been enemies. The galaxy had learned a hard truth. Worlds that relied on domination, oppression, and fear had crumbled quietly. Their fleets, once symbols of authority, were stranded, their leaders discredited. Colonies that had oppressed humans found themselves abandoned, their systems inefficient, their people dissatisfied. In contrast, humans showed that strength lay not in ruling with fear, but in understanding, in intelligence, and in the ability to act with moral clarity. Even among aliens who had once feared humanity, respect grew. Some who had once served as overseers now worked alongside humans as allies. They saw that humans did not seek power for the sake of power, but influence through example, knowledge, and guidance. They learned that humans were capable of unity, courage, and patience on a scale that no other species had anticipated. In one council chamber on Arkan 5, alien leaders discussed the changes quietly. Elder Zari, once strict and unyielding, now looked at the humans with a mixture of respect and caution. "We labeled them slaves," Zari said softly. "We believed they could be controlled. We believed we were safe. Yet they have proven that the most dangerous species is not the strongest, but the one that knows when to walk away." Liam and Sophie attended the council meeting, listening carefully. They did not gloat, they did not demand vengeance. Instead, they spoke of cooperation, fairness, and shared progress. "Humans do not seek to dominate," Liam said. "We build, we teach, we share, and we trust others to do the same. That is the way to survive, thrive, and grow." Across the galaxy, humans rebuilt. Colonies that had once suffered under slavery flourished. Education, medicine, and infrastructure were restored. Trade routes reopened. Knowledge was shared freely between species, and humans led by example, showing that leadership could exist without oppression. Their careful planning, intelligence, and morality became a model for other species to follow. Evan and Clara supervised the construction of a new colony hospital on Corin. Children, once laborers, now played safely in open fields. Machines worked efficiently, designed by humans and aliens together. Clara taught medical care to humans and aliens alike, spreading health and knowledge. Evan worked to improve transportation and energy systems, ensuring that the colony could sustain itself without fear or oppression. Maya led engineering projects across multiple planets. Factories, energy hubs, and spaceports were rebuilt with improved systems. Humans and alien allies worked together to maintain efficiency and safety. "We learned from our past," Maya said to her team. "We do not build to control, we build to help. We share knowledge, we share responsibility, and we respect each other. That is how we survive." Noah and Lila's communication networks connected multiple worlds. Scientists, traders, educators, and explorers shared information in real time. Systems that once enforced control now spread knowledge, health, and cooperation. "Our work," Lila said quietly to Noah, "is proof that patience, intelligence, and unity are stronger than fleets or armies. The galaxy has learned that lesson the hard way." Eli and Fiona continued to teach strategy and governance. Across liberated colonies, they guided councils composed of humans and aliens. Decisions were made through discussion, intelligence, and moral judgment. Conflicts were solved through negotiation and careful planning, not violence. "We have proven," Fiona said during one meeting, "that freedom is stronger than oppression. That choice is stronger than chains. That is the power humans have always carried." Even the children of humans who had been born under slavery now grew up in freedom, learning intelligence, morality, and unity as natural traits. Schools taught not only math and science, but history, ethics, and interstellar cooperation. Young humans and alien children alike learned that violence and domination were tools of the past. Knowledge, patience, and moral courage were tools of the future. The galaxy, once ordered through fear, had changed. Fleets no longer enforced obedience. Overseers no longer ruled with harsh authority. Colonies once exploited now thrived, guided by humans who had proven that leadership could exist without chains. And everywhere humans went, they reminded others. Strength was not in domination but in intelligence, unity, and the courage to act morally. Liam, Sophie, Evan, Clara, Maya, Noah, Lila, Eli, and Fiona were remembered, not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as a species that refused to be broken. They had endured oppression, outwitted masters, and changed the galaxy not through weapons, but through patience, courage, and wisdom. Their names became synonymous with resilience and hope. In quiet moments, the humans would reflect on the past. The memories of slavery, of oppression, and of being underestimated were never forgotten. But they had learned that the most dangerous power was not in vengeance, not in anger, not in domination. It was in knowing when to walk away, when to act with intelligence, and when to build rather than destroy. Across the galaxy, civilizations began to adopt the human approach. Planets that once relied on fear now sought cooperation. Trade, science, and culture flourished. Knowledge replaced chains. Patience replaced panic. And intelligence replaced brute force. On the planet Arlo, Liam and Sophie watched children playing in open fields, humans and aliens side by side. "We've done more than survive," Sophie said softly. "We've shown the galaxy a new way." Liam nodded. "Yes. And the galaxy has paid the price for underestimating us. Not with destruction but with the truth. We were never slaves. We were always capable. And now everyone can see it." Evan and Clara, walking through a rebuilt Corin, observed the new city skyline. Factories hummed efficiently, hospitals operated smoothly, and schools echoed with laughter. "We have changed things," Clara said quietly. "Not with anger or weapons but with intelligence, patience, and morality. That is our legacy." Maya, overseeing a massive engineering project connecting multiple planets, smiled at the cooperation between species. "We have proven something important," she said. "Strength is not in control. It is in wisdom, unity, and the courage to act morally. That is what humans carry within them." Noah and Lila, coordinating interstellar networks, shared knowledge with humans and aliens alike. Ships moved efficiently, supplies arrived on time, and information flowed freely. "The galaxy has learned," Lila said, "that underestimating humans is a mistake. They survive, adapt, and guide with intelligence. That is our power." Eli and Fiona continued to travel between colonies, teaching councils and guiding governments. Their message was simple and clear. Leadership is not domination, freedom is stronger than fear, and moral courage outweighs fleets and weapons. Everywhere they went, humans and aliens learned to work together, creating a galaxy more intelligent, safe, and united. And so, years after the day humans were labeled slaves, they walked freely among the stars. They rebuilt, they shared knowledge, they led by example. The galaxy had learned its hard lesson. The most dangerous species is not the one with the strongest weapons, but the one that knows when to walk away, when to act with intelligence, and when to build rather than destroy. The names of Liam, Sophie, Evan, Clara, Maya, Noah, Lila, Eli, and Fiona were remembered, not for conquest, not for domination, but as symbols of hope, resilience, and moral strength. The galaxy, forever changed, would carry that lesson for generations. Humans had survived chains, oppression, and fear. And in doing so, they had taught the universe a truth that could never be forgotten. Freedom, intelligence, and patience are stronger than any weapon, stronger than any domination. The galaxy had paid the price for underestimating them. And humanity, without anger or vengeance, had shown its true power.